Hello and welcome to Project Pixar. Today we will be talking about the 2016 film Finding Dory. Noah, how are you?
I find that I'm ready to talk about this movie.
Awesome. Yeah, we were saying beforehand, like maybe it should have been called Finding Dory's Parents instead of Finding.
Yeah,
I mean, Dory's
I mean,
not lost, right? Like, that's funny.
whatever it is, but,
Okay, so we'll jump right in. Who is your favorite character, sir?
Hank is my favorite character in this one. He's a bit curmudgeonly, I guess. He's just kind of like very antisocial. He wants to be left alone. He just kind of wants to do his own thing, and I can appreciate that in the character. Ed O'Neill's a good choice as the voice for him, and I love how he animates, and basically his character arc is really good in the film. So he'd be my favorite.
I'm lining up right there with you, sir. Honestly, I remember when I first saw this, I left the theater thinking, man, maybe they should have called it Finding Hank, because for me, he was the standout character. And it seems as though Pixar maybe thought so as well, because you could tell they were just having a great time with him. All the different ways they were able to use his camouflage and the different things he either turns into or disguises himself as. You know, he gets the entire ending credits sequence of him hiding in all these different spots. So fantastic character, just a treat to watch every time he's on screen. Dory is obviously the heart of the film, but man, Hank he's just the show stealer. He carries it 100%, so I agree, it's got to be Hank.
On that note, if Hank is something that you like, then what did you not like as far as moments, characters, anything like that?
Well, for my least favorite moment, this is kind of hard because I kind of put this in a category with Incredibles 2 and Monsters University. They're these sequels or prequels to some of their best films, but this is, I think, the best out of those three. I think this is my personal favorite out of those three, and I think it is the best film. I don't know, because I really like this film and I'm thinking over it. I guess there's no standout moment. Like, there's not a moment that says, oh, that moment really brought it down or that was weird. So I guess if anything, I do feel like Marlin and Nemo get a little undercooked in this one. And granted, they were the entire first film, but Dory was there too. So I guess that would be kind of. But again, there's nothing they do that's wrong or bad that I think like brings the film down. But I do wish they'd been in it a little more. They don't feel like they're very important in this film.
That kind of goes in line with what my least favorite aspect of it is that in comparison to like Finding Nemo, Finding Nemo, its themes were very not subtle, but they weren't in your face. I feel that Finding Dory is more in your face and more preachy about what it's trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is the least. It's not as subtle or smooth as what Finding Nemo was. Marlin and Nemo characters in particular are the most egregious about it because their whole subplot is essentially disabled people can do stuff, which is not a bad thing to say. It's just that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
They don't contribute to the plot other than to prove a point.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to look at it. I like that. All right. Next we have standout animation. Was there anything that really stood out to you in this film?
I really like the variety of the research institute or the slash aqua marine habitat. The variety of everywhere they go, and like the poking pool or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That whole scene is great. I really love the way it seems dangerous, and you just like the it almost feels like a battlefield, like
Yeah.
you're trying to escape hit by like mortar shells coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I loved that moment. And Hank, of course, the way that he shapeshifts everything around everything is really cool and creative. So those those things are what I'd say is what stands out for this one for me.
Yeah, I love the poking pool, and like you said, another great shift of perspective. Kind of makes me think of the Bugs Life scene where the rain drops and they're like mortar shells, and all the kids pushing their fingers. Great. All of Hank's stuff is, of course, brilliant. Like you mentioned, so something that really stood out to me, especially seeing it this time. This is only my second time seeing it, and it was when Dory gets into the tank with the blue tangs and she's looking for her parents and they're not there, and Marlin says, Dory, your parents are gone. And she like is in such a state of shock, and her vision gets all blurry and everything's swaying, and like you can hear Nemo and Marlin, wait, are you sure, Dad? But it sounds like it's a million miles away as her world is just like crumbling around her. And unfortunately, I've been in a situation like that before where I've gotten some like devastating news and you're just in this state of shock. And so to see the way they animated that, of everything's just going blurry and like Dory can't even, her mind is racing with these millions of thoughts. Love that. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, good point. As far as do you remember where you were when the first time that you saw this one?
I do, and I remember I was with a girlfriend and a friend, and we saw we went to Taco Bell afterwards. Yeah, we saw a Taco Bell on the way out the door.
Oh, Dory goes to Taco Bell. Right? I love that.
One happened to be passing by. No, and it was in the middle of the summer, and I always love going to see films in the summer. And somewhat similar to Monsters, Inc., there wasn't a like standout feeling after seeing this one. Monsters University, yeah, thank you. Similar to Monsters University, there wasn't the standout feeling of seeing it, but I still remember that, and I remember going to Taco Bell afterwards and having a fun meal and just talking about the film and how much I liked Hank and all that. So I do remember it.
Yeah, I saw it with my girlfriend at the time. And we both really liked it. I had a great time with it. What stood out to me the most was at the end of the film, the song that plays is a cover of Unforgettable.
Yeah.
And when it was playing at the end, the crowd was eating it up the whole time, and they really, really were liking it. Kids were, getting into it, and there was this older gentleman behind me when this song started to play, and it was like Unforgettable. It was like. Started doing that. When it came to the conclusion of the song, the guy behind me is like, "This movie was unforgettable."
Nice. Did you turn around and give him like a high five? Hey.
Yeah. It was just like, okay. I mean, it's nice that when a movie connects with people like that. So it was a nice, cute. Moment of that I remember when I saw it.
No, that's great. So speaking of Unforgettable, it's a pretty great song, great way to end the credits. Is that your favorite musical moment, or do you think there's something else?
It would be, because I can't think. Was it Thomas Newton Howard that did the score for the original? Newman. Oh, might be thinking of a different one. Yes, yeah. Thomas Newman did the score on the original, and which was fantastic. One of my favorite Pixar scores. And this one didn't hit me as much as that one. I can't think of the theme of it at all. I don't ever think it was like nothing stood out in a bad way, but the choice of Unforgettable at the end was the most memorable thing about it to me. What about you?
Yeah, it fits in it with it. I have to give it to Unforgettable as well, because it was new to this film. There's one other moment I'll mention in a second, but yeah, same thing. Thomas Newman did the score again, and the score for the first Nemo is one of my favorite Pixar scores, and this one was it was forgettable. I couldn't tell you a single thing about it. So, but Unforgettable being this great James Bond montage, like that's what it made me think of, and Hank and all his different poses, and it was fun to guess, like, oh, where's he hiding? And then sometimes you could pick him out and be, oh, I didn't see him, that's where he was. And I love when he gets in the car and he adjusts the little mirror. I'm a big James Bond fan, so it made me think of that. And the only other standout moment to me was when Dory, Nemo, and Marlin are meeting in those pipes, and Marlin is basically explaining or apologizing to her. But guess what plays there? The Finding Nemo theme. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Which is like, okay, but that was the old theme. Like, so as far as new stuff, it's unforgettable. But I remember I was so happy when I heard that theme. I was like, yes, there is the Finding Nemo theme, which is so strong and just one of the most brilliant themes he'd ever written. And unfortunately, the rest of the score is rather forgettable.
Yeah, I also did like the use of "It's a Wonderful World" when the when the van's going off the cliff.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
kind of
know.
cute.
I
It
don't
doesn't
like that part.
really.
And I couldn't even honestly. I don't know. It just feels weird. It just feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, ah, I see blue sky. Like as they're in the middle of the street. And I think that was supposed to be the point. But for me, I don't know. It just felt out of place. So, favorite dialogue, line, or joke?
Yeah, again, the first Finding Nemo was full of memorable lines and moments. This one it's amusing the entire time, but I could not really tell you or quote anything really from the film other than like little things like Uru Becky or like using
The sonar.
the sonar. Thank you, Sigourney Weaver. That part's kind of funny. Yeah. The only other thing the one line that I liked was, "You trust Becky? She's eating a cup."
Yeah.
So, nothing really incredibly stood out to me in it. So, what about you?
I would agree. There's not the real punch home serious lines that stick with you that Finding Nemo had. There, like you said, it was very amusing and charming the whole time. I laughed a good chunk of the way. I'm a sucker for a good pun, so I do love when Destiny says to Bailey, "Don't bail on me, Bailey." You know, I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. And I don't know, there's something a little sentimental about Hank before he drops Dory in the big tank where she's going into. He says, "Are you ready for this?" He says, "Yeah, you are." And he dumps her in. And it's not really a line, but of course I do love the moment when she finds her parents and she finds the seashells and you see that they put in the sea, that tugs at the heartstrings and that gets you choked up that they did that. But in spite of all that, and I do have to give a shout out to the sea lions, Gerald, and that was probably the line that made me laugh the most. He was like, "Oh man, I was having the best dream." He's like, "Was it the one where we were sleeping on this rock?" He's like, "Yeah, that one's great." He's dreaming about the very thing. And I've seen sea lions a lot at the St. Louis Zoo, and you'll often see them do that, just like bark at each other and like scrabble each other off a rock. And so again, this is my audience interpretation, but I always saw that someone at Pixar must have watched that behavior and said, let's come up with a story about, like, let's come up with why they are doing that. So I love the little Gerald storyline where they want to borrow the bucket and they let him sit on the rock for a few moments. So, all right, get off, your time's off. And yeah, I do really enjoy that whole bit.
So, what would you change in regards to Finding Dory?
That is a good question.
Yeah, that were up to you. If you were the head of the mouse.
Right? Here's what I do. So, again, this film is very good, so there's not that overriding, oh, this part really drags it down. Similar to Monsters, Inc., I kind of wonder how necessary it was. Sequels in general, it's like, it was okay. Finding Nemo was great. I don't know if it needed to go beyond that. Granted, I do like that they focused more on Dory, and they did a really good job of weaving in. It's always tricky when you do prequel stuff because you're basically trying to justify things that have already existed. And sometimes, like in Monsters U with Randall squinting, it doesn't work. But in here, I think they did a really good job that they did set it up very well and they wove her backstory in very well that, okay, yeah, so that's why she says all these things. Now, again, though, did I need that? Did I need to know that the reason she says just keep swimming is because that's what her parents taught her? No, that was still something that was just unique to Dory. So while there isn't an actual moment in the film I think drags it down, overall it does just kind of have that sequel feeling of like, was this really necessary? So that's me. What about you?
I will say I'm glad. One thing that they did do with this that I'm glad was introduce new characters.
Yes.
They didn't try to bring back like all the things that everyone loved from the original, even if they were smaller parts. They didn't do that. So I was thankful for that. But what I would say, is that I think the biggest thing that I would change is either in that regard, because Marlin and Nemo, was Finding Nemo, were the main characters in the last one. It felt like they had to be part of the journey in this one, where they almost feel like they don't really contribute anything to the overall plot. It's more they are there as a mouthpiece for what the director is trying to say as far as the theme of the film, which is okay. It fits because of Nemo's disability. but at the same time, it feels unexciting that what they're given to do. That would be what I would say.
Yeah,
Is
totally
that
fair.
either get rid of Marlin and Nemo or give them something better to do.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so wrap it up with closing thoughts. What do you think?
It's a really good film. I really enjoy it. It's fun. It moves pretty well. It has a good pace to it. It's not as memorable or exciting or funny as Finding Nemo, but Finding Nemo is one of the best Pixar films anyway. So it was facing an uphill battle to begin with.
Right.
But that being said, I do appreciate where they went with the story. There's a great heart to it. It's not as memorable as some of the other Pixar films.
It's fair. So, sequels are weird as I'm thinking about this, because what you just said, I was thinking, what if Marlin and Nemo weren't in this? Because really, like you said, the new characters are the ones that shine a whole lot. But if they weren't in it, then I think I would have this feeling of like, well, where are Marlin and Nemo? Why aren't they there? They should be there. They're basically Dory's family at this point. And I don't know. So maybe there just wasn't really a good way to walk that line. But I agree. It's also kind of unfortunate to see them get shafted when Marlin was the MVP of the first movie. Like, he's...
Right. Why couldn't they have been in the beginning and just in the beginning?
Yeah.
They would have still been in the film.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But see, then I know myself, and like if they were, I would probably been like, oh man, Marlin and Nemo were barely in it. That's just kind of one of those weird things with sequels, is when you want to focus on new people. If you don't bring back the old people, then... So, I don't know. It's got all that. But all that aside, it is very charming. It's got some heartwarming moments. It tugs on your heartstrings. All that is really good. It's very creative, too. I appreciated they used this aquatic institute to show a range of new locations and new creatures that we didn't see in the first one. Like, they could have easily just cycled back to those. So that was really nice. Have to give a call out to the end credits little thing where Gil and the gang show up in the bags. I'm sorry. I get that's cute. It's been a year. Those fish are gone. Like, they didn't live in those bags for a whole year. Again, it was a little cute thing to be like, oh, see, there's Gil in them. But that just felt like pandering. But overall, I do really like it. And I think it's the best out of the 3 films of the Incredibles 2, Monsters U, that little, like, trilogy of sequels, prequels.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
All right, so next we're moving on to 2017. Get those engines revved up one last time, because we're moving on to Cars 3. We will see you then, folks.
Vroom, vroom.